Welcome to Prescott Today. My name is Greg Mengarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, and your host. We have a high altitude show for you today. We're here at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University flight line, and we're going to be talking about the Wings Out West Air Show, and we're also going to have a distinguished World War II veteran who will be with us on the show. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Greg Mengarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, and you're watching Prescott Today. Our first guest on the show is Jerry Kidrick with Wings Out West. Jerry, thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So we've done these before, Jerry, and Wings Out West is now in its third year partnership with City of Prescott and Embry-Riddle.
Right. I don't know if you remember, but we had a AOPA fly-in, the Aircraft Owner and Pilots Association, back in 2016. And it was a big hit with the city, and we partnered, Embry-Riddle and the city got together and made that happen. And so the discussion was, let's keep doing this together. And yes, our third year, and it's a great partnership. It's working very well.
You know, it's a lot of fun to watch. It kind of started smaller, which is probably smart, but this thing has really grown. Give us the details of when it is and the times.
Right, well, it's on the 5th of October, and it starts at 9 a.m. and it closes at 2. At 10 o'clock that day, 10 to about 1 will be the aerial demonstration.
Okay. And the event's free?
It is free. Free parking, free to the community. It's something that Embry-Riddle and the city do for the local community.
So you talked about the aerial show for the Wings Out West. Tell us a little bit more about who's coming and what we might see out here for the air show.
Well, this is going to be an amazing show, I just have to say, and it's probably our biggest one yet. Our theme is the 75th anniversary of D-Day, is this year. And of course, they had celebrations over in Europe, so we're going to have a celebration here in Prescott. And so there'll be the highlight of that, I think, will be a simulated combat drop. Okay. We're going to have some warbirds here, a significant number of warbirds. Lots of aerial performers. We have the best aerobatic performer in the country in Rob Holland. Embry-Riddle's own Matt Chapman will be here with his high-performance airplane. So we have a lot of things going on, a lot of booths, a lot of food vendors, that kind of thing.
No, that's great. So you're kind of playing off the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And I know here later in the show, we're going to talk to a lieutenant colonel who actually flew D-Day in a C-47, and he'll be at the air show.
He will. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Hamilton, he's a superstar, and we're very lucky to have him here. Yes, Dave's going to be the guest of honor, and Dave's going to probably ride along in the C-47 during the combat drop. And if you get a chance, please talk to Dave. We're going to set him up. He's going to sign autographs, but he's an amazing guy to talk to. Great hero.
I can't wait to talk to him and have him here on the show and have him share some of his stories for our viewers here on the show. So a lot of great stuff that'll be happening in the air. Talk a little bit more about the static displays and what people will see as they walk around.
Sure. Well, we'll have some more warbirds that won't fly in the show, but they'll be on static display. There'll be an Army Cobra here, a TBM Avenger, a Navy aircraft. We always have the Casa de Aero, the local modeling club. They always set up here too. Embry-Riddle, of course, will have a great display of the technology that our students are working with here. So we'll have our inflatables and an airplane that the students are building, that kind of thing. There'll be several vendors from the local community selling different things, that kind of deal. This year, for the first time, we're going to have reenactors. So World War II reenactors with their vehicles.
Great.
They're going to set up tents here around the airport, and so people will be able to go up and talk to them about what they do. That's a first for us.
Yeah. Well, lots of amazing stuff going on that day, Jerry. And I guess I just want to stress to our viewers that bringing out the whole family is a must here. I mean, there's so much going on. A lot for kids to do, a lot of interactive stuff. I know your students will have lots of things for the kids to do. And so I just would really encourage everybody to bring the whole family out. It'll be a great day.
Absolutely. And in that light, there's a pancake breakfast that starts at 9 o'clock right here in this hangar where we're standing. And then, of course, the food vendors will be open from about 10 o'clock all the way through 2. So the opportunity to eat lunch out here also. I do need to thank a couple of people. Galpin Ford has helped sponsor the show this year, Lamb Chevrolet, and then the law offices of K. Nearing have been helping us put together this air show this year. So
great.
I want to thank them.
Well, it's been such a great partnership, and I'm really excited to come out again and see all the great displays, to watch the air show. I love the idea that you're really remembering and commemorating World War II, D-Day, the 75th anniversary. Can't wait for people to meet Lieutenant Colonel David Hamilton, an amazing human being and really representative of that great generation.
Yes.
That was there on D-Day that really preserved our freedom today. And so anything else you can think of that we missed here for the Wings Out West Air Show?
Well, we're going to have some other World War II veterans that'll be here in addition to Dave, and we'll have a special place for them. Our Army ROTC cadets from Riddle are going to escort them over, and we'll also recognize them as being part of that greatest generation that you mentioned. And we will have in that aerial demonstration, of course, we're going to end with a missing man formation. That's always a recognition of those that can't be here, that didn't make it. The warbirds that are going to be here, people have an opportunity to fly on them Friday afternoon before the show, after our rehearsal, or Saturday afternoon after the show, or also Sunday. So if you want to ride in a B-17 or a B-25 or something like that, please come out. You can do that ahead of time. You can set it up by going on our website, and there's a list of who they are that are giving rides and a list of how to contact them, or you can contact them directly, the Commemorative Air Force out of Mesa.
Okay.
So,
oh, that's wonderful. Again, just more stuff for the whole family.
Right.
Be great to have your kids on one of those airplanes so they can really experience what that was like. Probably not like flying commercially today, a little different. But it really gives you a sense of what our veterans flew on, way back even into World War II. And so, so many great things for the family. I want to thank you for all your work on Wings Out West. It's been a great partnership. Again, October 5th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The best way to get out here would be to go to the Heights Church and grab a shuttle, or go to Embry-Riddle and grab a shuttle. And lots of great things for the whole family. Make sure you get everybody out here on October 5th. Jerry, thanks again for all your work.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Well, when we come back, we're going to have Lieutenant Colonel David Hamilton, who we've been talking about on the show. Tremendous veteran. Can't wait for you to meet him. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It's my distinct pleasure to have on our show Lieutenant Colonel David Hamilton, who's a World War II air veteran. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for your service to our country, and congratulations on all of your efforts in World War II. And you're 97 years young, is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, look, we're going to have a great conversation here, I think, today. First, let's talk a little bit about D-Day. We're going to talk some about you going back and what you got to do, remembering 75 years ago what happened. But what was your mission on D-Day?
Our mission on D-Day was Pathfinders. We had 20 crews that are trained since March, and we had specially trained paratroopers that we were dropping with radar and setting up panels and lights. Most of this was British invention and American manufacture, especially the radar in our airplanes. But because we had a $100,000 airplane with $500,000 worth of radar in it. So we were very tight security. We were called the Navigation School. And until D-Day, there was no mention of Pathfinders as far as the Americans were concerned at all. The British bombers had Pathfinders. And in fact, the theory of pathfinding derived from them. And then again, of course, probably from the olden days in the founding of our country from the Indians. But the essential marking of an area was forced by the fact that the first two parachute drops in the European theater of operation were a disaster from the point of view of accuracy. The first one was the invasion of North Africa when they dropped some paratroopers who were about 30 to 60 miles away from their drop zones. The second was the first night of Sicily when they dropped the 505th Regimental Combat Team, and they spread them about 15 to 20 miles. Eventually, it was decided that turned out to be an advantage. The Germans thought we dropped a lot more than we had. But there was a disaster there too, because the second night there'd been bombing of the fleet off the beaches, and then the paratrooper planes came in with the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and they shot down a lot of those airplanes. The United States Navy did. But in the fog of war, it was not one of those things that could have been avoided, but wasn't.
Right.
So they set up pathfinding to eliminate the possibility of a repeat.
Okay.
And the next operation into Salerno, there was one airplane that dropped onto lighted oil cans along a beach. So that was pretty good.
Pretty technical.
Pretty technical. But it was amazing, the development of the radar that came not because of pathfinding, but with pathfinding. SHORAN and LORAN and the radar altimeter and the PPI scope, which the 8th Air Force used for bombing, we used for navigation.
Okay.
But you could pick out roads, you could pick out canals, highways.
Okay.
And I can remember being told and finding out my own way with my navigator, old Carl Jones, who got the nickname G-Box, because that was the name of SHORAN to the British. G-Box used to say over or under, and I knew exactly what he meant, high tension lines.
Okay.
Whether they go under them or over them, and the word was always over.
You were flying that low?
That low.
Wow.
We were within 50 feet. We knew where we were anywhere on the northern coast of Europe because of the radar and the airplane and the quality of our navigators.
Wow.
When we were told to take a crew from our squadron to the Pathfinders for training, we took everybody but the navigators. They had been trained by the Royal Air Force Navigating School at Bovington. And I got a navigator who was from my group, but a different squadron,
Okay.
Carl Jones. And he turned out to be absolutely fantastic. One of those kids that took to it like it was a toy
Right.
and became so good at it that he was teaching
Okay.
eventually. And
So you guys were flying C-47s?
C-47s with all this equipment in them, and we carried 20 paratroopers. And on Normandy, we left our base, we flew 3-ship V formation, took off, did a circle, formed up about 1,500 feet until we hit the water, and then we went down to 50 feet to get under the German radar.
Wow.
And I can remember my brain saying, well, we have a glycol tank behind the pilot's thing, but that's for ice, anti-icing on the windshield. I said, you're not going to get any anti-icing down here. So I took all the water out, I took the glycol out of the tank and filled it with fresh water, distilled water.
Okay.
And I used that to keep the water, the mist of the salt water over.
Oh, okay.
So when we pulled up and went over and set the red light on for our paratroopers to stand up and hook up, we were up about between 800 and 1,200 feet, and we ran into the cloud bank, that famous cloud bank
Right.
that existed at Normandy and messed up, in one respect, the whole operation to a degree.
Right.
It bothered everybody, including the Pathfinders, for a degree, but I decided to pull away a little bit from my flight commander, and my navigator said, don't, Dave, you're perfect. Stay right where you are. Drop down 100 feet. So I dropped down to 850 feet, came out of the bottom of the cloud bank, and it was a full moon.
Yep.
They were bombing Cherbourg, so there was light, and you could identify and see roads and everything. And I can remember making the comment in my head that when they took the photographs of the drop zones,
Right.
they took them from directly overhead
Right.
instead of obliques.
Right.
And they showed no water as the flooded part of the Murderette River.
Got it.
If they'd have taken them from the side, they'd have got a reflection of water.
Okay.
But they didn't do it. So we lost some paratroopers. When I say we, I'm talking about the Allied.
Yes.
We lost paratroopers from both divisions, 101st and the 82nd, that dropped into the Murderette River and drowned.
Okay.
We also dropped a bunch of people that landed in mud up to their waists and eventually struggled to get out and added to the fight.
Okay.
But again, it was one of those things where the Germans had no idea how many we dropped.
Right. So D-Day was kind of a very strategic day because of the moon, because of the tides.
Right.
There was even a kind of a false alarm. Weren't you supposed to go?
Well, there was. It was a delay of 24 hours.
Right.
And that delay was caused by weather over the drop zones. And the British drop zones were in a different tidal time. Mm-hmm. So there were a 45-minute difference in the British parachute drop and glider drop than there were in ours. But the British had their Pegasus Bridge and we had our St. Mary Glees. And they did very good work. But our troopers were not relieved out of the line for 40 some odd days. And they took quite a beating.
Yeah. How successful were you getting to your drop zone?
Very, very successful. Thank God for my navigator. And when they got the paratroopers out, I got rid of 20 paratroopers in 12 seconds.
Wow.
And pulled the static lines in. They got them all in. And I had the firewall, the throttles. And we hit the deck. And my co-pilot, Big Stan Beerwith, he said, Dave, you want to lift your right wing or you're going to hit the steeple at church in St. Mary Glees. And I remember, I don't know how I said it, but he remembers I said, I don't want to go to church this early. So we lifted our wing and passed the church and turned. In that turn, my navigator said, you got a perfect heading for Marcouf Island, which was off of North Utah Beach. And I remember being told at the briefings that North Utah Beach, Marcouf Island, had anti-aircraft guns all over the place. Mm-hmm. And they had some big guns there, too. And if they were in operation, they could have enfiladed both Omaha Beach and Utah. Mm-hmm. We didn't get fired at one bit there. We got plenty of fire over our drop zone.
I was going to ask you how much fire you took.
Well, I took 200 hits on my airplane alone from machine pistol.
Really?
26 caliber to a Schmeisser. Wow. And then I had a wingtip blown off by 27 millimeter. And we got a hit right where the windshield meet up above inside the magnetos that turn your engine on and off when you're starting. Well, thank God the engines were on. Otherwise, I would have been out of luck. But when I got back to my base, I couldn't turn the engines off. There was nothing up there. My crew chief said that my co-pilot was covered with glass and pieces of metal that he dressed up. But he had his helmet on, his goggles on, and his flak suit. So he was in pretty good shape. I got some of it, but not to the degree he did. But after we got past Marcouf Island, got back up a certain amount of altitude, my navigator says, come back here, Dave, and take a look at this scope. This is fascinating. I went back and it looked to you on the scope when you looked at it as if you could walk on the blips all the way from the British coast to the French coast.
Wow.
And this was 3.5, 4 hours before they hit the beaches.
Right.
So I said, I want everybody in this airplane to look at that thing and think about what that means. Because, you know, a fighter pilot just got himself in an airplane. Mm-hmm. A bomber pilot's got himself in a crew of 10 or 7, depending upon the plane. We had a crew of 6, a crew of 5, plus an observer, 6, and 20 paratroopers.
Right.
So people said, you had a bigger responsibility. I said, my responsibility was on this neck only.
Right.
If this neck was okay, they were okay.
Right.
So it worked.
Well,
it worked.
Amazing stories. I think we're going to have to do a whole nother show and just kind of walk through all your stories. You have a vivid memory, and it's very helpful, I'm sure, for our viewers to hear firsthand from someone who was flying D-Day. It's fascinating. I appreciate you sharing with us.
Well, it can't be erased, that kind of image, you know. It's so implanted into their brain stems that it's there and you can't get it out.
Right, right.
And it's a little different than just going to the doctor or going to the drugstore and having a malt.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You've been back to Normandy as recent as this past June was the 75th anniversary of D-Day.
Right.
Tell us about that experience.
That was a fascinating experience. I'd only been back to Normandy once, and I was in 1960, and that was an unfortunate experience. My wife got sick, and we had to cancel our trip halfway through it and come home. But in 75th anniversary, we've been fortunate enough to go to Connecticut, say goodbye to the C-47s that were going over, and they were going the northern route up through Goose Bay and Labrador, and then Iceland, and a little stop in Greenland.
Get a little fuel there, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had gone overseas too, but I went the other way. I went through Puerto Rico and the Amazon River Basin and across, and then Ascension Island and up through Africa. But it was an exciting adventure. And having gotten over there, we've all met at Duxford. But I had the privilege of going over a day ahead of time and going back to my old air base at North Witham up in Leicestershire. And they greeted me as if I was the king. I've never gotten off a train in Grantham as I did, and there was an honor guard of RAF cadets, all young kids with their uniforms and everything. And then we went to the air base, and they had a flyover of D-Day Doll, that pretty famous C-47. No, it's the C-53, because it's got an unreinforced floor and a different door. They could still drop paratroopers, but it didn't have the big wide door. You couldn't put a Jeep in it. That kind of it. But C-53s were staff airplanes normally in the airlines. And the fact that this was in troop carrier, they were mostly staff airplanes.
Okay.
But they dropped paratroopers.
Right.
D-Day Doll was quite an airplane, and it's still flying. I flew it in England, and I flew it again. I didn't fly it in Oklahoma. I flew Booney Baby or whatever, and that's when I did my low pass over the crowd.
Right, right. So for the 75th anniversary, there was a lot of reenactments, a lot of cool things happening. Normandy, I know, really does a great job of welcoming everybody, and of course they love the Allied troops, the U.S. troops, because they saved Germany. But you had a special experience yourself flying a C-47.
Well, I was offered the chance to fly part of the trip from Duxford down to this channel in the airplane that Bob Sessions owns and runs. It's known as the Pan American Special. And it's a C-53, pardon me, but as plush as it can be. And he invited me up to sit in the right seat, and I flew the airplane from the right seat, and I had a ball. And I got the taste of it again. It comes back to you like that.
You still got it.
Yeah, you still got it. Well, I've got 37,000 hours, so I mean, that's not something you can eliminate.
Right.
I flew 5 years the North Atlantic in constellations in the airlines between the Korean War and World War II.
Right.
So I had some experience. But no, going back over for Normandy was a wonderful experience. And flying from Duxford, we flew over and then said goodbye to the White Cliffs of Dover and everything else. And we come up to the French coast, and the weather was really, really pretty nice. And we were going to go to the airport there at Caen, which was in the British sector.
Yeah. And
I said to Kay, I said, it's nice to come and see the French coast without being shot at. And it was. But we landed, and there were all the American C-47s, the British C-47s, Norwegian, Italian, Dutch. There were a bunch of additional C-47s. There were quite a few there.
Okay.
And after the D-Day June 6th memorial at Omaha Beach, where President and both America and France gave wonderful speeches.
Yes.
There were 9 of us sitting in a row right behind the president's row, And the president went by, and I gave him a salute, and I said, "Arizona salutes you." And he saluted me right back. He said, "I love Arizona."
Oh, good.
And then after the speeches were over, the wife of the French president wanted to meet all the American Legion of Honor recipients,
Okay.
of which I was fortunate to be one. And we were introduced to her, and she couldn't have been more gracious, spoke beautiful English.
Right.
And then they went down, the four of them went down, they had a 21-gun salute. Then there was the flyover. And the best part of the flyover was the C-47.
Of course.
And boy, they were something else. And of course, the British had their flying teams and different colors.
Yeah.
The French did too. It was a magnificent array of everything. But I must say, it was quite a day. And I was able to sit back and see the whole thing. Whereas we couldn't see what was going on the stage. The people who were in front, must have been 18,000 of them.
Really?
They had these great big screens on both sides of this arch. They could see exactly what was going on. So we didn't have a clue, really.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to be there for the 75th, to fly in the plane and to take all that in, to meet the president, as well as the president of France. So, well, cool stories. Let me ask you, you're 97.
Yes, sir.
What is your secret? I want to know to live that long.
Well, it sounds sort of flip, but I have great genes. My parents were wonderful people, well-bred and everything else. But the thing that really kept me this old is the lack of anti-aircraft accuracy. And I was shot at plenty, both in World War II and in Korea. Not so much in the Cold War.
Right.
In the Cold War, we went up and intercepted the Russian bombers, and we waved at them as we photographed them, and they waved at us, and they photographed us. But we were flying jets, and it was a different world, completely different world.
Yeah.
I didn't get into jets until after I'd done my tour in Korea. But I did a tour in Korea, and I was fortunate enough to do 2 tours of combat in Douglas airplanes with Pratt & Whitney engines. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 companies that I have great respect for. And I know there are other great companies and great engines and great airplanes. But I like Douglas and Pratt & Whitney.
Yeah. Well, very good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot of fun chatting here today. We're so honored to have you as the guest of honor at the Wings Out West Air Show. I look forward to seeing you on October 5th for that.
Fine, sir.
We'll have a lot of fun.
I think we will.
Yeah. And again, I want to thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for what you did, on D-Day and those stories. So glad you can share those.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
And we'll have to get back together and share some more stories.
I'm for it.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Right.
Thanks for being on the show. Well, thank you for that. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us. That's all we have for today. Just a reminder for our Wings Out West Air Show. It's October 5th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Be sure to go to the Heights Church and pick up the bus shuttle from there. That'll bring you right into the air show. It'll be the most convenient way to get here for the Wings Out West Air Show. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.